Hello and welcome back to Math Time with the Math King. Today we're going to be practicing division with decimals. Now, division with decimals isn't too difficult compared to regular division. We just have to worry about where our decimals are located and what we have to do with them if we have any. Sometimes we don't have to do anything if we see a decimal, but sometimes we have to change the problem a little bit in order to divide. So let's take a look at some examples that I have up here on the board, and then I'm going to do one more with you after I finish these three of a little bit bigger number, okay? So up here I have, you'll see the same numbers written three different times, but with decimal places, with decimals written in different places. Here it's 5 6/10 divided by 7, 5 6/10 divided by 7/10, and 56 divided by 7/10, okay? So we're going to set up our problem just like we would a regular division problem, because it is a regular division problem. So I'll put my bracket here. I'm going to put 5 6/10 divided by 7. Remember, my first number, my dividend, goes under the bracket. My divisor, the second number in the problem, that goes outside. Now, when I'm dividing, it's important to look at the divisor. The divisor cannot have a decimal in it. If it does, I have to change it. In this problem, there is no decimal in the divisor. There's only one in the dividend. That's fine. The decimal can stay in the dividend. I don't have to change that. So let's do this problem right here and see what we get. Before I start to try to do my division, I'm going to take my decimal that's right here and move it right up here so that it's already in my quotient or my answer. This way, when I write my answer down, I already have my decimal in place and I won't forget it later. So first, I'm going to say, okay, can 7 go into 5? 7 is bigger than 5. So since 7 is bigger than 5, it cannot go into it. It cannot be divided into it. So I'm going to put 0 times up above it there. 7 goes into 5 0 times. If I have 5 chairs and 7 people need to sit down, I don't have enough chairs for everybody, so I can't do it. Now I say, can 7 go into 56? I take both numbers together now. 7 can go into 56. Now is when we need our times tables. 7 times what number either equals 56 or gets us as close to 56 as we can get without going over. For all of these examples, I've made it even, so we don't have any remainders left right now. 7 times 8 equals 56. So I put my 8 up here above the 6, and I multiply. 7 times 8 is 56. And I subtract. 6 minus 6 is 0. 5 minus 5 is 0. No remainder, and I'm all done. Very simple. My answer is 8/10, or 0 and 8/10. I moved my decimal up right away. And then I just divided like I normally would. No big deal. If I wanted to do partial quotient division, I could have done that too. Just make sure that you have your decimal point up there when you write your answer, okay? Let's move on to the next one. So let me write my problem here. So it's 5 6/10 divided by 7/10. Now here's where I have a problem. I cannot have a decimal in my divisor. I need to take that decimal and get rid of it. But I can't just erase it, because whatever I do to this number, I have to do the same to this number. Now, the technical description of what we're doing here is we're going to be multiplying by powers of 10 to get rid of that decimal. Since there's only one decimal place here, that's only one power of 10. We're going to multiply it by 10. So if I multiplied 7/10 times 10, when you multiply by 10, you move the decimal point over 1. So my answer would just be 7, because my decimal point would go here, and we don't put decimal points at the end of a number if there's nothing to come after it. So 7/10 times 10 equals 7. So that's great. That's good. I'll have 7 as my new divisor in a second. But I also have to do the same thing to the dividend. So I'm going to do 5 6/10 times 10. That means move my decimal point over 1. So it would become 56. Okay, so now my new problem will be 7 for my divisor and 56 for my dividend. Okay, because I changed both by multiplying each of them by 10. Remember, whatever you do to one side, you have to do the same to the other. The exact same thing. That way it keeps it equal. It has to be equal. It has to be fair to both sides. So now I can divide. 7 goes into 5. We talked about it before. 0 times. 7 goes into 56. 8 times. 7 times 8 is 56. I subtract, and I get 0 for remainder. So even though I had 2 decimals up here in my division problem, I end up without a decimal in my quotient, in my answer, because I moved the decimal out of the way. I had to get rid of it in the 7/10, so I moved it one place to the right. So that way I have to move this number, this decimal, one place to the right in that number. Okay? Instead of writing the times 10 each time, just think of moving your decimal place. If I move this one decimal place, I have to move this one decimal place. And that left me with 7 and 56. Let's take a look at the third one. I've got 7 as my divisor. I've got 7/10 as my divisor. And I've got 56 as my dividend. You'll notice there's no decimal here. There's no decimal. So what do? Well, if I want to write down my powers of 10 times 10, I need to move it one place to get rid of it. That would make it 7. I move the decimal one place to the right. I don't have a decimal here to move one place to the right, so I have to create one. I have to put a decimal here now and move it one place to the right. What do I put here when I don't have anything there? I have to put a 0. So now I'm going to divide 7 into 560. I moved this decimal to the right. I have to do the same thing here. There was no decimal. So I added a decimal, moved it one place to the right, and I had to add a 0 to fill in. If I want to do my powers of 10, 7/10 times 10 is 7. Remember, I just moved the decimal point one place. This was 56 times 10. 56 times 10, well, remember, 56 times 1 is 56, and I add the 0, 560. Now I have to divide. 7 goes into 5, 0 times. 7 goes into 56, 8 times. 7 times 8 is 56. When I subtract, I get all zeros. Now I still have this 0 over here. I can't leave it. I bring down the 0. I have all zeros. 7 goes into 0, 0 times. We talk about the chairs again. If you have 0 chairs and 7 people want to sit down, there's no place for them to sit. So 7 goes into 0, 0 times. I have to put my 0 up here. It's very important. I can never leave an empty space over here at the end of a decimal problem. The quotient has to have something above each number. Okay? So now when I'm done, I don't need this 0 right here. I can get rid of that one. That leaves me with 80 this time. 80 instead of 8/10 or 8, I'm left with 80 because of my changing the decimal places and moving everything one place to the right or multiplying by 10. Now I'm going to show you one more. $348. I'll leave it there. divided by 1 4/10. Okay? Let's see how we do with this one. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite the problem. 1 4/10 divided into 348 thousandths. Now, I need to move the decimal place. 1 place here, so it's 1 place here. So I have 14 and 3 48 hundredths. Notice, I moved my decimal point 1 place here to get rid of it. I cannot have one in the divisor. I move it 1 place here so that it's now in between the 3 and the 4. Excuse me. You know what? I'm going to change this for a second here. Forgive me for a second. I'm changing my problem as we go. I'm going to make it 340. Okay? So now, I've got 3 40 hundredths divided by 14. Let's do our division. Can 14 go into 3? No, it cannot. Oh, before I start, let's move up the decimal. Can 14 go into 3? No, it cannot. So that's a 0. Can 14 go into 34? Yes, it can. How many times? Well, let's see. 14 times 1 is 14. 14 times 2 is 28. 14 times 3 is 42. That's too big. So we're going to put a 2 here. 14 times 2 equals 28. Notice I don't have any decimals down here. Now I'm just going to subtract. I can't do 4 minus 8. I cross out the 3, make it a 2, make the 4 a 14. 14 minus 8 equals 6. 2 minus 2 equals 0. And I bring down this 0. 14 into 60 now. Okay? Now, let's see. I want to do 14 into 60. 14 times 2 I know is 28. 14 times 3 is 42. 14 times 4 is 56. So I'm getting closer now, okay? 14 times 4 is 56. I know if I go up one more, that's going to be too much. So I'm going to say 4. And that makes 56. And when I subtract, I can't do 0 minus 6. Cross out the 6, make it a 5, make the 0 a 10. 10 minus 6 is 4. Everything else is zeros. Now, I can't have a remainder when I have a decimal point. This is what I wanted to show you on this one. As you get into this a little bit more, you're going to come to times where, you know what? You can't just say, oh, it's 24 hundredths, remainder 4. It does not work that way. But what we can do, since we have a decimal here now, is we can add another 0. I can add another 0 and bring it down. Now I've got 40. Okay, let's see. 14 into 40. Well, we know 14 times 2 is 28. 14 times 3 is 42. That's too much. So let's do 2. 28. Okay. Can't do 0 minus 8. So I do my regrouping. I'm left with 12. I can't have a remainder still, so I add another 0. Now I'm at 120. Okay. So now I know 14 times 10 is 140. So I'm pretty close to that here. If I take 14 away, I'm going to get even closer. I realize 14 taken away from that would not be 120 yet, so I'm going to do 14 times 8. 8 times 4 is 32, write the 2, carry the 3. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 3 is 11, 112. So I put my 8 here, my 112 down here, and I subtract. I do some regrouping, and I'm left with 8. Now, I'm going to get to 80. Okay? I can keep going with this until I get to 0. Now, most of the time, right now, your teacher's going to say to you, just give me 2 decimal places. 1, 2. There would be my answer. Okay? Or 3 decimal places. They're not going to ask you to keep doing more and more and more of this right now. When you get older, they will. But I could keep adding zeros until hopefully I get to an even number. I get to a 0 for a remainder, and then I find my answer. This might be a little more complicated than what you're doing in class, but I wanted to show you that when you have a decimal, you can continue to add zeros along the way because you cannot get a remainder. Right now, we don't want remainders when we're using decimal places, okay? And we could keep going with this. There's no need for us to go that far, though. As you start to do these, you'll be asked to find it to a certain decimal place only. If you have any questions on this or anything else in math, just ask. Check in with me on Google Classroom. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know if you need help with anything. I'm always happy to help. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.